Welcome to the From Harm to Healing podcast. I'm your host, Chris Jones, and I'm a therapist who runs the From Harm to Healing treatment program, an online program for men who have engaged in infidelity or compulsive sexual behaviors within the context of an intimate relationship. I started this podcast to illuminate some of the common blind spots within the treatment fields for compulsive sexual behavior or sex addiction through the lens of the deceptive sexuality trauma model. I hope you find this resource enlightening, particularly if you're somebody navigating the pain of betrayal and deception for yourself. Thank you for listening to the From Harm to Healing podcast. In today's episode, I'm bringing you part 2 of the conversation I had with Trish recently. So in the last one, we talked about intentional vibe theory. And in this episode, Trish really presents this idea of the sound of DST. And it's really a continuation in some ways of the 22 rooms and another way of illuminating that even further. So I would recommend anyone listening to this to make sure that you've already listened to the 3-part individual episodes I did about the 22 rooms.
I want to move into the sound from there, what you're naming. I think it's a nice connection point here. The sound of deceptive sexuality trauma. You know, ever since I was a little girl, I always bring in these little stories from when I was younger, but music was in my home. Like my mom would play piano. She would play more upbeat piano. My grandmother, she would play when I'd visit. She'd play the song over and over again, Love Makes the World Go Round. And my mom would play accordion sometimes and things like that. So music was in the home. Not always jovial, but, music was in the home. The sound was in the home. And as a little girl, I had a lot of emotions, around. And I found my way to the piano. And I used to go to it and play emotionally. And I would just go on to the piano and just kind of let myself vibrate into the keys. And that was the instrument there. So I went there. And no one would bother. They just let me be there, Maybe no one was listening either. I don't know. But no one really interrupted that space for me. And at the time, I didn't know what I was doing, but I always felt relief after that. And so my mom and dad put me into piano lessons at a very young age. And I went to piano lessons and the teacher was like, "Oh my God, you're a genius." And I was like, "I'm out of here." Because I felt like so much pressure, to play piano and do it right. And then this will probably give you a giggle, but I then took Taekwondo. I decided Taekwondo was for me later on. So I went and did some other kind of physical movement to release whatever I was feeling. Later on in life, something big happened in my life, and I bought a piano. And I went to the piano and I kept playing emotionally to the piano, and it helped me move through a lot. And then I was ready to get a piano teacher. And right before that, I was playing, I'm drawn to the classical. So I was playing for Elise. I could read music and everything since I was little. So I was doing that, but I never played just that one note. I was trilling all over the note. I was just like everywhere, my most authentic expression of whatever it was for me. And I was just free doing it, just me and the piano, And when I got a teacher, I had 2 choices. I had one choice, and the first person I called, we're going to be in the metronome and we're going to follow the metronome. And I was like, oh my gosh, no way. The second teacher I called, she was so amazing. She just listened. She sat there and she was excited about my excitement, about how I played music. And I was like, you're it for me. Went in, started playing piano. She let me go all over all the notes. Eventually, she taught me to come in and really appreciate that one note, that one center point note. But she gave me all the freedom to express at first, which is what we do. Rooms, we give them from the moment they enter. Stage 1, we listen, we name. Stage 2, We stabilize, we give them all the room, and we help them regulate that. And then stage 3, we give them so much room to metabolize. In the pause moments, in the unwinding, in sitting with, they know we're there with them. So I'm weaving back in the stages so that they can have that stage 4, the shift in themselves, reclamation, regeneration, reconstruction. They can move into the next one, oxygen, that new air we're talking about. They feel more alive, more expansive. They feel energetic shifts in them, new meaning, emancipation, freedom from trauma. You know, the sound of that. Right now, though, I'm going to take everyone into a different kind of sound. So I'm going to ask everyone to take a deep breath again, to ground yourself, to take care of yourself as they move through this. It might open up things in you. And it's going to be fast because that is the sound. That's what's happening so fast. When that dark cave of unlit truth crashes into the secret sexual basement, I'm giving you the sound of the 22 rooms. So I invite you to take a breath, inhale deeply, exhale, settle. Hanging out in the pause. So when I break apart the sound and I say the covert phase has a sound of a roaring hum of high octane. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Exposure phase has this crashing sound, and you're going to hear me crash. I'm prepping you for that right now, so I don't put you in such a shock. And from that crash of the injury, it goes into a crescendo over and over again. Those are rooms 4 through 8. That's that, right? This crescendo. The symptoms are like a staccato sound. It's like a popping, constant popping. That's all that PTSD criterion, popping, popping, popping. Then you get into symptom progression phase, and this is that exhaustive space of what we call like a funeral dirge. It's like a dragging of and a mourning and a grieving of more uncovering of things that are impacted. And so there's such a deep drag of the self through it all. So I am laying that out so that you can hear it when I do it. Now, when I share it, I'm coming from the partner impacted perspective right now. It does not mean that the person who caused harm is not going through a similar sound, although there might be a different layer to it. And it doesn't mean that the injured relationship isn't going through that similar sound, right? Because you've got two sounds coming together that are just like, you know, Omar gives this trajectory, and he shows it as bombs going off and arrows coming in at the same time. So the bombs going off are all the impacted partner crying out, right? And the arrows are integrity abuse behaviors and tactics coming in to stop the impact. So there's this sound that's happening. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hold this. So take a deep breath again. Inhale. Exhale. It can feel excruciating and terrifying when someone is lost in liminal space, also known as the space between, the unknown with no landing points to anchor in. The once trusted natural path of life, moving from thing to thing, or the once trusted connection with their person, and the bridge between is no longer safe and at times no longer there. Liminal space. The space between. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The rumbling hum of high octane, deceptive, compartmentalized sexual relational reality. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The dark cave of unlit truth over the secret sexual basement. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Impact. Abuse victim trauma existing reality. To 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Post-traumatic symptoms, triggers, intrusions, re-experiencing, avoidance, scrambled negative thoughts and moods, arousal and reactivity, high distress and lost functionality, dissociation. The crescendo is shocking. The rupture unbearable, and the cracks to the core too great to overcome. Intersection impact is the covert abuse. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, slamming into the life someone was living and fracturing the ground they once thought was holding them safe. Crash. 4, exposure phase, integrity abuse shaping. 5, discovery trauma. 6, disclosure trauma. 7, reality ego fragmentation. 8, acute relational rupture and attachment injury, now floating in a horrific, fragmenting space. The victim is nowhere to land, left scrambling for some sense of self and ground. This is liminal space. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. The space between one thing and another is a threshold moment. It is when something happens and there is no landing point to be found. Pre-existing reality ego to reality ego fragmentation and the constant hits that go far beyond in a rippling out effect that pummels all parts of the life a person knew at one time. When the loss of PRE or pre-reality ego happens and reality ego fragmentation blows someone apart in the exposure phase, disorganization and destabilization are evident. A rupturing moment when two separate realities and values crash from perceived safety into the reality of chaos and fragmentation. Devastating internal and external hemorrhaging with an inability to hold oneself together. Extreme shock and exploding, paralysis and imploding, and a loss that is so primitive and desperate, with this desperate, flailing need to survive. The inability to take in and digest the erasing of who they are and the life they once knew and trusted as being resilient enough, alive enough, and secure enough. The 4 critical injuries: reality ego fragmentation, relational rupture and attachment injury, gut-brain injury, complex trauma shaping 6 systems, distortions in thoughts, emotions, self-contact, perception of the person who caused harm, relationships with others, meaning-making of one's life. Your senses get impacted. Identity, belonging, shame, carried shame. The movement towards connection is all about survival. Survival patterns of fight, flight, freeze, fray, fawn, activate and create scattering pain internally, externally, panicked and breathless and restless. The body and mind cannot find their way to function together. More often, they are reinforced to split because of an individual hyperstates and seeking safety, hypervigilance, hyperventilation, hyperarousal. The mind drags the body around, causing multiple winding up moments of distress cycles and more exhaustion, imbalance, and desperation. Immobile, collapsed, paralyzed. The body and mind shut down into hypo states. No vigilance, no ventilation, no arousal, and the weight of it traps the individual so deep into the well of darkness that they are unable to relight the fire that once kept them moving. The internal and external brokenness has a magnitude that disorganizes all systems: emotional, cognitive, somatic, energetic, relational, spiritual. This is liminal space for all three entities: the person harmed, the person who harmed, and the injured relationship.
Letting that sit in the air for a moment, because there's so much that's added, metaphor, parable, picture. There's so much added with that idea of the sound as well, and the beautiful way that you speed up, you slow down, you get loud, you get quiet. And there is something I can only imagine in terms of how that resonates with maybe many people listening to this, what that brings up for them. For me, I've not walked the experience of being the betrayed partner, but as I heard you talking, maybe I can share what came up for me as you were describing that. That idea of the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There's that sense of there's something off. It's there in the background, but it's normal. That is my life. That is the sound. That's normal for me. And that really connects with that idea of the separation of realities, that being in that dark cave, being slightly starved of oxygen, not enough that you're passing out, not enough that there's an acute injury, but that background 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, it's not quite right, but it is my normal. That is the covert phase. It's like that hum that you mentioned.
You know, Chris, when you mention that too, I'm just, for the person in the secret sexual basement or the impacted partner above in the dark cave of unlit truth, right? The song on Spotify that I named for that is What the Earth Bore, which is this dark, deep, sad river sound. And for the person who's in the basement, as you're naming, there is this unimaginable devastation happening in there that they're not naming. They're so unconscious of it that sound is a deep cry, that you're just naming. It's in the background, it's familiar, and yet it's a cry that I'm not hearing.
As you moved into the exposure, and particularly that the idea of room 4 to 8, so the ongoing integrity abuse, but that cluster of discovery trauma, disclosure trauma, reality fragmentation, acute attachment rupture. The words that came to my mind were out of control. Like, it's loud, it's violent. Your voice became loud, became violent, became almost dysregulated in a sense. It really picks up that image, and it's unstable. And then you move into those trauma symptoms, and you named them as you went, but I get that feeling again. I'm just expressing what comes up for me as I hear you go through that. The sense of helplessness, like I'm subject to something actually inside of me, trauma symptoms that will come up. I don't know when they'll come up. I don't know where the next trigger is. I don't know the next landmine that's going to explode. That feeling of helplessness, an unseen enemy, an enemy that's actually inside of me in my nervous system now.
Yes, yes.
And then as we move to that symptom progression, your sort of tempo, the tone changes again. And really got that sense of almost a new normal, a dreadful, a feeling of dread of like, is this the new normal? Stuck in this, like I've come through that exposure. Things have come down a little bit, but there's the ongoing relational ruptures constantly. There's the ripple effects you talk about. So we had that abnormal normal of the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 in the initial phase, in the covert phase. Now you've got this dreadful new normal. Is this what it's always going to be like? Is there a finish line here? Is there a bridge to the other side? I talk about these rooms almost daily, and yet that gave me slightly new nuance as well in some stuff that came up for me as you were saying that.
Well, I love your honesty and how you're sitting with it as well. When you tapped into the exposure phase, yeah, it is violent. And if we can all hold that for the person who's walking in the room, it's violent for the impacted partner. It's also violent for the person who caused harm. And then the violence that happens in the injured relationship, I go back to that line that Omar does of the explosions and then the arrows, the constant battle to make this go away. And you can't, is there. And then, like you named also, the injuries are popping. That creates that hypo and hypervigilance back and forth. 1 minute you're collapsed, the next minute you're just racing ahead with your eyes peeled back. And there's no person to be found. You are the symptom in that moment. And I love how you're framing, symptom progression as this new normal. And as I named, as this funeral dirge. You're grieving your relationship you thought you had, and you're finding out more information at the same time. And like you named, is this my new normal? And that's the part, just the whole of it. The covert phase specifically is a part that is probably one of the most difficult ones to reconcile, because they're like, wait a minute, for everyone, wait a minute, what? And then to find out after we move through, and again, we know this is nonlinear, it's all happening all at once. We're breaking it apart to give you sound and information. But intentional vibe trauma treatment would be slow down and hold everything that's coming so you can help them sort and organize what's happening on the inside of them in many different ways, not just cognitively, but through metaphor, through sound, through slowing down and pausing. I love, Chris, too, how you sat for a moment after I was done giving that sound and you let it hang, because, I can tell how much you care about your audience and who are listening. You're tuned in. You're tuned into them, and you knew they needed that. We both are holding space for them right now, and I'm sure they're feeling a lot right now hearing that. Be tender. Give your heart tenderness right now.
And I do so appreciate you're also bringing in the three plates, the three entities. So we are understandably really lifting up and naming the impact for the partner so often. And it's one of the main reasons for doing this podcast, doing the episodes we do. We're really remembering that this model is actually about humanizing everyone involved. We name that abuse, victim, trauma reality. We don't name that to punish people, to shame people. We name that to empower people with the truth. I think you alluded to that earlier. And I'm struck by, I think this can be something really hard for the partner to understand for understandable reasons. I'm struck by how often I'm sitting with men in consultation calls or initial assessments and things. And they have that bewildered look. They have the almost that shell shock kind of 1,000-yard stare of, I can't believe I've done this. And you're trying to reconcile that with, well, you knew you were doing these behaviors, but there's this disconnection from the reality, disconnection from the impact, disconnection from what was really going on. And again, just that bewilderment of, I can't believe I've done this to family, to my partner, to myself. I just can't believe it.
They're both in shock and relational trauma. They both are. And that is so disorienting. The word bewildered, it is that kind of shaking themselves off to, can I see reality? And they can't, because they're so disoriented. And you naming, the person who caused great harm, the distress they're feeling, they can't even locate that, because they're not in conscious state yet. That's the goal, is raise consciousness. They've been so unconscious and so away from self that to come back to self takes a moment. And we have to help the partner impacted hear that as well. How long it may take them to come back together. What's really important here as we raise consciousness for the partner impacted and also the person who caused harm, as we raise that consciousness, what's really important is to help them catch their breath together and really name that they are now an injured relationship.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the From Harm to Healing podcast. If you'd like to find out more information about the deceptive sexuality trauma model itself, you can visit minwalamodel.com. If you're interested in the services that I offer, in particular the From Harm to Healing treatment program, please visit chrisjonestherapy.co.uk.